It honestly took Leonardo DiCaprio telling Ted Sarandos, the head of Netflix, that if he didn't take Kiss the Ground, that he was going to go over to his house and cough on him during the first week of lockdown. So the movement that came out of Kiss the Ground going on Netflix happened in spite of the industry. And somehow people got curious about their food and they had nothing else to do. So what did they do? They went on Netflix and they watched Tiger King, and somehow they watched Kiss the Ground. All of this work is for you. It's for the kids.
We're borrowing the land from our kids. Like, this is what we're going to leave to the next generation. So it's up to us. This isn't our land. We've borrowed it from the children.
Right.
And so we have to do everything we can to maintain that.
Kids have been so beaten over the head with fear and that they have no future. And so this conversation is my favorite conversation, because, especially with young people, because you can see them have a future again. And you can see them see the pathway for how they can have an important role in that. And it's almost like a whole generation of youth that we have put into paralysis and apathy because of our conversations that are all fear-based. We can lift that and we can give people their future back. And I really believe that that's our job.
Our future through Earth's living grace.
Well, welcome, Soilmates, to a one-off special recording of 6 Inches of Soul, the podcast. I'm joined, as usual, by superstar producer Claire McKenzie. Hi, Claire.
Hi, Rich. And for the first time in a long time, we've seen each other, but also we're matching. Come on, put your hat down a little bit, then you can see the...
There we go. The Soilmate exclusive merch made specially for Groundswell the Festival, which we were just at a couple of days ago, which is kind of why we're doing this episode. So how was your Groundswell Festival this year, Claire? And also, it's 10 years since it begun. How have things changed since you first started attending?
Yes, so there I was. Badge. Yes, this is I believe my sixth one. Can't believe it. Where's time gone? Definitely went as first one was definitely research, finding our feet, proposing our film. And we stood very slightly wobbly in some corner. The amazing cherries gave us a moment. And it was 2,000 people, I think, mostly farmers. So we were just there with them. We sang with them around a fire. And so the market difference now, obviously it's 10,000 people, 10 years, very full. Each venue seemed to have more very specialized talks, whether that was on Pasture for Life or the wonderful Emergent Generation tents. And within that, they had all these wonderful talks. So that was a difference. And I also felt there are so many more people. I've written down the list of people. And I've also got wonderful photos from those who appeared. But so those are from farmers to finance, those specialing in food and fibre, event organisers. And then, of course, we got to meet some filmmakers, which Richard will expand upon in a minute. Very exciting, big launch of a very amazing American film. First one, Kiss the Ground, influenced all of us hugely. So I will allow Rich to expand, because he brought some incredible people, thanks to Rich and his contacts in the States, have opened up a whole nother world for us British crew. But one of the highlights I'd love to put out were two books. One is someone who's featured and has been very good to both Rich and I, Tim Parson, and this is his Intelligent Farming book. So if you really want to dig in and find out a bit more about the process of regeneration, I mean, all of the people which I love, I think, would take away. There's not one person you meet who's in the system of regeneration will say they've got all the answers. Tim is the last person to say that. They're learning every day from nature. And I think that's one of the takeaways. There's a wonderful holistic feeling, systemic change, but all those people kind of wanting to work together to build a more hopeful and beautiful world. And I think that's my main thing I take from it, Rich. How did you feel? And you've been a few times, you come from the States, obviously you're British, but you're, what are your reflections from being there?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a growing movement, it's such a growing community, and I really noticed that this year especially. I've only been coming 3, maybe 4 years, but I've seen more food people there, meaning supermarkets, brands, and not just their sustainability teams, but their actual buyers looking to buy food grown from these types of systems, which shows you that consumers are starting to ask for it, and there's an interest, a growing interest, which is really exciting. So I was really pleased to see that. From a personal point of view, it was fun to be there as part of that community with my dad, who turned 80 this year. I hope he doesn't mind me saying that. So he was helping to man our stand, and I got Annie there, my wife, and it was just a really lovely vibe generally of people who have the same kind of outlook on life, and this issue of how agriculture works, how we grow food, how we feed the world, how we feed our communities is becoming more and more front and center outside of the event. But when you're there, I mean, just so many good people, all of whom want to share their ideas, their thoughts, and and in that vein, this year the team who made Groundswell, the movie documentary, which got, as we're recording this, got released a couple of weeks ago on Amazon Prime. Oh, what's that? Okay, let's start. We can cut that piece out. So, and in that vein, the team that made Kiss the Ground, which for many, as Claire said earlier, really welcomed people into this world and inspired many of us. And that was a movie documentary which was on Netflix, now on Amazon Prime. That was followed up with Common Ground, both of which featured Gabe Brown, who's been on our podcast a couple of times, and a very inspirational leader in this space. Both of those two films were quite US-centric, largely, dealt with a bit of the history of agriculture. But the most recent one they've released is called Groundswell, which is really interesting because it takes a more global view of everything. And the team that made it, as we will find out shortly, went around the world finding examples of farmers and communities farming in a way that is capturing more carbon, that is growing more nutrient-dense food, that is creating more resilient agriculture and farming systems. Really exciting. And it's just I think it's a really good film, and I've been recommending it to all of my friends to go watch it and just try to I think it does a really good job at welcoming people into the space. So we were very lucky to meet with Rebecca Tickell, who's the director, and she spent a bit of time sat on a bale of hay with Claire and I to share her thoughts. But before we go to the interview, Claire, do you have any other kind of closing thoughts on Groundswell?
I just think I wanted to thank Will Harris, who's also on our pod, for coming to sit with us, and he and his daughter and his granddaughter, who also featured in an episode, and to see them on screen and then to meet them and to be grounded in these people who've, he's come from a very conventional system and he's gone through a real journey, and his kids have only gone back on the farm because of the regeneration he's done. And to hear them working as a family, and the granddaughter's really she gets involved in tallow production. It was incredible. These aren't rich, crazy landowners or anything. These are very grounded, beautiful people. And so I think it would, for them, that conversation for me was kind of the essence of a lot of the conversations at Groundswell. And then I just, Rich, to you to land a wonderful interview with Rebecca Tickell. I think as filmmakers, to meet director like that, who's, they've been studying this subject for a very long time. She comes from a farming background. I really loved hearing about that. She's got a family that's so fascinating. And I just was really grateful to her for giving us the time, because she was very, very busy, and well done you for making it all happen. But it was just a joy. And I think the other lovely final thing was just, there were quite a few of us from the team there. And Colin was there with Priya, and wonderful Mel, who helped us with distribution. So very, very happy space to be in. And then our other guests, quite a long list because they make up the Groundswell people, but it was amazing. So.
Yeah, lots of new soulmates. And just you mentioned about a book, another one I'm going to hold up to camera, which I purchased, is the amazing Lucy Williamson, who has not yet been on the podcast, but should be on it really soon. Released a book called Soul to Gut, which I'm halfway through and is really good. So please go and buy that if you are thinking about getting a new book and learning about food and the effects of human health and how it's all linked to soil. But yes, this is a special one-off interview, different to the format that we normally do for the podcast, but we thought it was definitely worth doing. Rebecca is truly an inspirational person who has done so much to spread this message far and wide. And I noticed from the movie that she brought her 2 children with her along the journey, and that was where we started. So here we are, on with the interview. Thanks, Soilmates. We'll see you soon. Well, welcome, Soilmates, to a little special episode of 6 Inches of Soil, the podcast. We're here live at Groundswell, the festival, with the amazing Rebecca from Groundswell, the movie, the documentary. So first of all, welcome to England, to
Thank
the UK.
you.
How have you found it so far?
Well, I love England. I feel like I access my ancestral heritage every time I come here.
Yeah.
I need to come and kiss the ground here to my ancestors.
Yeah. You do, that's true.
Yes.
Well, you and I, we have one thing in common, which is we both have kids about the same age. How old are your children?
9 and 12.
Okay, so I've got Tilly and Oscar, who are 10 and 8. And I mentioned to them this morning that I was going to be having a chat with you. And I said, oh, do you remember Groundswell? And so the first thing I'm going to do is show you this little clip, which, this was their response when I said, do you remember Groundswell? So this is what they said.
Our Earth has a fever. And that's not what this film is about. This film is about food. That's an apple, by the way. No, I think it was on the other hand. It's fine.
Your children are wonderful. They got it. They got it. It's about food.
They got it.
And the
It's about
apple,
food.
like kids, that is the most beautiful message you could have shared with me. That's what this is all about, right there.
Totally. Well,
Yeah.
I showed it to them very randomly. We were out in the Gobi Desert in the middle of nowhere, and I organised a little unofficial film premiere in the middle of Mongolia in the Gobi Desert with a bunch of nomadic farmers that we were visiting on our kind of holiday adventure. But they really got it. Anyway, I haven't finished. So I asked each of them if they might have a question for you.
Oh.
So this is, let's see if I can do it right. This is Oscar.
Can children be involved in this solution? And what's the best thing for us as people to do?
Can children be involved in the solution? And what is the best thing for people to do? First of all, I love him. Thank you for the question. What a great question that is. And yes, children can be involved in the solution 100%. In fact, in my opinion, all of this work is for you. It's for the kids. And so kids are involved in the solution because every time you eat, you're choosing what type of soil that food is grown in. You're either choosing soil that's been degraded and desertified, where the water and the life has been killed from the soil, or you're eating food that has been grown in healthy soil, which then in turn creates healthy food, flavor, the color in food. Did you know that the color and the flavor in food is a result of its coevolution with insects, and it's actually insects that make food flavorful and colorful?
Wow.
I know. So we need biodiversity. And so I think just being interested in nature and being curious about nature and allowing yourself to go into nature and to listen as a young person instead of just being kind of glued to your phone all the time is a way that you can tap into your intuitive knowledge, into remembering how to coexist with soil and how to coexist with nature. And we're a part of that. So as a young person, I would say, ask your parents, and every time you have a chance, to eat food that's regenerative, and also get in nature. Allow yourself to be inspired by the beauty in that magic. And I'm from California, so that's how we talk there. You have to forgive me. I know we're in England, so I'm trying to adapt my language.
Yeah, get your pinky finger out.
But it is, to me, when I'm in nature, it is magical. I feel connected to everything. I feel one with everything. And it's when I'm in nature that these epiphanies often come through, that put me into action around healing the planet and protecting it for you.
Maybe it was a Gabe Brown quote where he talks about we're borrowing the land from our kids. Like, this is what we're going to leave to the next generation. So it's up to us. This isn't our land. We've borrowed it from the children.
That's right.
And so we have to do everything we can to maintain that.
That's exactly right.
So that was Oscar's question.
Thank you, Oscar. That was great.
He'll be delighted with that response. And obviously Tilly wanted a question too. So this was Tilly's question.
What are the best foods I should be eating to help this problem?
You know, Tilly, that is an amazing question, and people do ask me that all the time. I'm very sensitive not to tell people what to eat because I feel like what people eat is a very personal choice, and I'm not afraid to tell them, make sure when you're eating food that you're voting for healthy soil. But I can tell you what I do, and I have what I call a regenitarian diet.
Okay.
So I try to eat less than 20% meat in my diet.
Okay.
The rest I try to eat mostly vegetables that are grown regenerative and organically.
Yeah.
Obviously fruits and nuts and that type of thing. But then the 20% of protein that I eat, I try to keep as much of that, the protein I grow on my own property. So I'm a poultry farmer.
Oh, wow.
And so I love harvesting my eggs and I love growing my chickens. And when the roosters get too mean, then we have other types of protein.
Yeah.
And it's just really incredible to be that connected
Yeah.
to my food source. And obviously I try to eat as many vegetables from my farm as I can. And I know that I'm very privileged in the sense that I have land where I can grow food. And so if you can't grow your own food, you can still have a regenitarian diet if that's what inspires you. And for me, that looks like supporting the ranchers that are using animals in the land in a regenerative way, because we need animals on the land. You don't have to
Yeah.
eat them if you don't want to.
Yeah.
But in terms of having animals on the land or not, that's non-negotiable.
Yeah.
That is part of a regenerative system. We have to have grazers and ruminants moving across the land the way that nature would have them doing it. And if you can't have it happen naturally, then humans need to intervene and participate in that system. And I love supporting the ranchers that are doing that because those are the early innovators. Those are the ones that are truly leading the way to build that healthy soil that we absolutely need to be able to sustain life on Earth. So every time I buy meat from a regenerative rancher, it, for me, is a form of activism. It's a form of using my money to support the movement in the future that I believe in for our kids.
Yeah, and the big reason that we set this podcast up was to try to talk to the consumer. I'll always remember this. We just moved to Austin, Texas. My wife was pregnant with Tilly, who we just heard from, and we just got through the first trimester, and I was sent off to the supermarket, which was near to where we first landed, just north of Austin, and it was a Walmart. And I was used to medium-sized to small-sized supermarkets here in the UK, and suddenly I went, and I just needed the staples, milk, eggs, bread, and so I thought, I'll go buy bread first. And I went into the bread aisle, and I'm not joking, 100-foot long, 5 layers high of all these different kinds of bread. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to try to get basic food for my wife who has my unborn child in her womb growing. How do I do that? And it was really a moment of like, you know, the choices that I make such a big difference, even to a big Walmart, as was the case here. Because if I'm choosing the bread, which is the 3-ingredient bread with no high fructose corn syrup in, I'm sending a vote to Walmart to say there's somebody out there that wants to buy this type of bread. And so we all say that to our listeners, like, you've got the power to make this change. There's not really a question in that, but it's just, it was an observation.
And how amazing that Walmart in the United States, at least for a period of time, I'm not sure if that's still true, was one of the largest suppliers of organic food to Americans. And that speaks volumes about what Americans are wanting. They're wanting their food to heal them, and it also acknowledges that there is at least some awareness of that connection.
Well, it was one of the happiest days of my career was when we got Walmart to put grass-fed beef, an organic grass-fed beef, on the shelf. And you and I both know that Walmart probably don't deeply care about the farmers and where it comes from. But what that shows you is that they recognize that there is a consumer base out there that's starting to care about this. And that's probably thanks to the work that you've done out there, educating people to learn about the importance of where food comes from. So thank you for that. What was it like having your children with you? They feature a lot in the film, especially when you went to Africa and some of these other countries where they probably were eating different foods and things. Were they like, Mum, or were they like, oh, Mum, this is really exciting to be here? What was it like?
It completely changed them. When we left, we live in a little bubble in Ojai, California, which is an agricultural community. It's a beautiful place with some major agricultural problems. So it's actually in some ways the perfect place for us. And my kids have watched me within our community learning how to speak with conventional farmers and learning how to speak with my own father, who's a conventional farmer, about these issues. And so they had some awareness, but they really didn't have a clue when it came to what it looks like out in the world in reality. And so our first stop on our trip completely around the world with the kids was at a refugee settlement in northern Uganda.
Wow.
It took us 72 hours to get there.
Okay.
And that time from leaving our home, our beautiful little bucolic farm, to getting all the way to the other side of the world 72 hours later and arriving in a refugee settlement where displaced, we're refugees coming from war, we're living in a desertified climate and learning how to survive by growing a food forest. And they were. And it was amazing. And they got to be immersed with everyone. And we got to go to school with the kids. And we were in the villages. And we brought soccer balls with us wherever we went.
Okay.
So Jedi would blow up the soccer ball. And then he would go and play with the kids.
Jedi and Oscar would be fast friends, by the way. Everywhere on our travels, we have to have a soccer ball. And my wife has an air needle in her wallet at all times, so we have to deflate it before we get on the airplane. At the other end, we have to pump it back up again. So Jedi and Oscar would be fast friends. Anyway, carry on.
Well, we brought actually 12 balls with us and 12 pumps, and then everywhere we went, we just gave it to them. And it was this really, because oftentimes they couldn't communicate with words, but as soon as they got the ball, it was like all the kids came together and they were fast friends, and they had a language that was very physical and very heart-centered, but not based in language. It was it was incredible to watch. My daughter brought art pads and markers, and so she was able to go find girls to sit down, and they weren't able to communicate either, but they were able to draw pictures and they were able to color, and then she left the colors and it was just that was a great way for them to start the trip, just because I think it really set their expectation for how it's going to go, because it honestly didn't get any easier. We ended up getting stuck in a political riot in Nairobi where I was sitting outside. I had to it's a long story. I had to go get $10,000 cash because I was being bribed by the Indian government, and I had to go down to where the riots were happening and it was like a whole thing. And then we all got typhoid. And so all 12 of our crew traveling the world had typhoid, and there's sections of the film where nobody would know it, but all of the Indian dancing on the Ganges, which by the way they couldn't do on the river because the water levels had been rising. So now they're doing all of these ceremonies up on their balconies because the climate is changing. But our cameraman was throwing up off the balcony, and our other cameraman was doing other things from the other end in the alley, and we were so delirious, but we never stopped. We just kept going. And so my kids learned resilience. They learned of their incredible privilege. They expanded their palate because they had no choice, or they were going to starve. And I think that they became true warriors for the soil on that trip. They had heard us talk about it, but now actually they have their own show. They brought cameras and they have filmed their own series called Athena and Jedi Learn to Fix the Planet. I'll show you the sizzle in a minute.
I'm obsessed.
And it's this incredible show that is about their journey around the world, and each episode has a different curriculum talking about climate change, regeneration, desertification, climate migration, all of this through the lens of how we can heal, not doom and gloom. Kids have been so beaten over the head with fear and that they have no future. And so this conversation is my favorite conversation, because especially with young people, because you can see them have a future again. And you can see them see the pathway for how they can have an important role in that. And it's almost like a whole generation of youth that we have put into paralysis and apathy because of our conversations that are all fear-based. We can lift that, and we can give people their future back. And I really believe that that's our job.
A couple of episodes ago, we went into the classroom and I got a rancher from Mexico and a local composting expert and me, and we just set up the mics in the grade 4 classroom, and we got the 18 kids one by one to come up and ask a question and just start to engage them. So it's really important to us that the next generation's minds, you catch them early to help them really understand the truth of how ecosystems work and the importance of diversity and like where food actually comes from. It's so important. And then right up until the teenage years and university. I mean, I'm here at Groundswell. I was sharing yesterday on a panel I was on. I went to university to study agriculture, and I was taught soil is just a medium, and to get anything out of the soil, you have to put something in. So you put chemicals in, you get yield out, and that's how farming works. And obviously that's the exact opposite of how it works. And so just that need for education is so critically important. And that's why I love your films, because that does just that. And so
that's why I love Regenify, because that's what you guys do at Regenify. And I also love the work that you're doing here with all of your local farmers. It's just like, that's how regeneration globally happens, is region by region. And you guys have been able to tackle that here in this region. And now you're doing that separately with other work in the United States. I'm so grateful.
Well, that's true. And listeners, that's my day job, is working for a company called Regenified. We don't talk about that very much, but we go and verify farms to kind of prove out that regenerative agriculture is working, and then connect that through to food products on the shelf that you can buy, which is really important. Now, it's been a few years since you started the journey with Kiss the Ground, Common Ground, Groundswell. I was curious kind of what changes you've seen globally, or the reception to your films. How have you seen things change since you started on this journey of educating?
Well, when we started when Kiss the Ground actually came out, that was a 7-year journey to get to that. And when we started Kiss the Ground, the reason it took 7 years was because nobody could agree on the language, nobody could agree on the science. They couldn't even agree on what we were going to call it. I remember I was at a meeting where people were trying to decide, for marketing purposes, what are we going to call this? That's how early it was in sort of this coalescence of this movement. And to be respectful, not that this hasn't been done by so many people for so many, this is not new, as we all know, but the movement around it and the kind of momentum to shift away from conventional agriculture to regenerative agriculture, that's becoming mainstream. And so I think that's the thing that I wanted to point to, is I've watched it go from something that was sort of held by indigenous people, held by early innovators, held by people who somehow managed to have the wisdom from their grandparents passed down. So there were people doing that, but on the global scale, it's industrialized, and it's happening more and more with seed colonization and going into these other areas where families who pass down seeds for generations are now being told that it's illegal to share their seeds. And so what I've witnessed since the beginning is something that didn't even really have an official name, something that no one could agree upon, with not really much science to support it, only anecdotal stories, to a movement that's scientifically backed, that is growing at a level that I can't even believe. Like, people come up to me all the time. They're like, I started this business 6 years ago because I saw Kiss the Ground, or I dropped out of school because I saw Kiss the Ground and I wanted to become a farmer. And it's kind of hard to believe, actually, but we went from, in 2020 in the United States, 3.5 million acres in transition to regenerative agriculture, which to today, which is, I don't know, we might not agree on this, but I think it's at about 86 million acres. And that's in 6 years. That's unprecedented. I mean, how long did it take for the organic movement just to get to what it is today? And so that to me says that we are tapping into something that is unstoppable. It's something that people are remembering as true and as healthy and as the way forward. And also, what a necessary conversation inside of this very bleak atmosphere that's based on Armageddon, basically. So it's like just incredible to watch this movement flourish, and to see all the other things that have come from that I have nothing to do with. I mean, I feel like I went from feeling that this was on my shoulders and that I had a job to tell the story and to bring it into the mainstream. And the pressure of that has been so intense.
I can't imagine.
And then when Kiss the Ground finally got to the point where it was going to come out, nobody wanted it. And then COVID happened. And it honestly took Leonardo DiCaprio telling Ted Sarandos, the head of Netflix, that if he didn't take Kiss the Ground, that he was going to go over to his house and cough on him during the first week of lockdown.
Are you
and then
joking?
we got a call from Netflix, from the buyer at Netflix, who had already turned us down twice. And keep in mind, we'd made 4 movies on renewable energy, and Kiss the Ground was not one of those movies. And the buyer from Netflix called us after having said no twice and said, "We are so excited about Kiss the Ground. This is the most incredible environmental documentary. We love movies about renewable energy." They hadn't even seen it. So the movement that came out of Kiss the Ground going on Netflix happened it happened in spite of the industry. It happened in spite of what was happening at the time, which was the whole world was shutting down. And somehow people got curious about their food and they had nothing else to do. So what did they do? They went on Netflix and they watched Tiger King, and somehow they watched Kiss the Ground. And that was an incredible moment. And it's like everything unlocked in that moment. And now I feel this sense of relief. Like I don't feel like my work is done. I honestly feel like I'm still at the beginning of my journey around this. But I feel a sense of, we as a community, we've got this. You know, we're not done. We're at the beginning of this. But I see the momentum and I feel the energy and it feels so good. And I know that this is contagious. And also within my own family, when I started this, my father, who is a legacy farmer, 14 generations of farming in my family that I can trace. In the Midwest, they became corn and soy farmers eventually and embraced, they just went no-till, which they thought was good for the environment, but then they started using chemicals. And my dad would stand in vats of Agent Orange. And so would my aunts and uncles. And now they have all the farmers' diseases, Parkinson's, cancer, immune illness, infertility, all of them were in my family. And I witnessed the hardship of that. And I witnessed the hardship of my father and his journey. And my dad was like, "What do you know about farming, little girl?" You know, and I didn't know anything, but now I've gone around the world and I've interviewed all of the top experts on how to heal the earth through farming. And my dad, he's watched all the films. We've never agreed pretty much on anything. And now he never said, "You're right," but he doesn't use chemicals anymore. And now he sends me his organic produce. And so
I love it.
For me, like personally, that's a huge victory. And also feeling like I'm learning how to cross that bridge. You know, like I know what I'm in it for, but it's not what everybody's in it for. And so I'm able now to recognize with compassion and love in my heart what someone else might be in it for and meet them there. And that's been a journey for me.
Yeah, well, I love that. They have a little vegetable patch at their house, which is about 10 minutes away from where we're talking to you now. And they were big users of Roundup glyphosate as they were growing their broccoli and asparagus and lettuces in their garden. And Claire and I have been on a campaign, and we posted a video a couple months ago of me going to the potting shed, which is our little shed where they keep all the lawnmower and stuff like that. And there's a little shelf which used to be the Roundup shelf, and that shelf is now empty. We're winning. We're winning, people. So
Roundup.
So thank you, Leonardo DiCaprio, for starting that, which led to this, which led to that. In your travels across the world, you must have seen some pretty significant challenges and obstacles, and the system or the climate working against farmers and ranchers. Like, what have you seen to give hope to the listeners?
I mean, I think it is real that being a regenerative farmer is not like utopia, because it's messy, you know, it's life and death on a farm. And so, and I really recognize that. And I also understand the value of farmers feeling like no matter what, they're going to get paid, and it doesn't matter what the weather is, that they're going to get by. But the ability for that linear extractive system to continue, I think farmers are realizing that the gig is up and that they are going to go bankrupt. And so if it's not their health, if it's not the environment, if it's not people asking them to stop spraying that brings to regeneration, ultimately it's going to be farmers are committing suicide at a 5 times higher rate in the United States because bankers are forcing them to uphold their agreements to continue to spray, and their profit margins are getting less and less, and farmers are going bankrupt. And so I think the biggest barrier, though, as Gabe Brown taught me, isn't the technology, and it's not the know-how. It's what he says, it's what's between your ears. And that I witnessed even with my own father. You know, there was nothing I could really say that would have him say, "Yes, you're right about that." But at some point along the way, after I had sort of talked to him and tried all of these different approaches long enough, there was at some point where it was his idea.
Yes.
It was his
Yes,
idea.
Exactly.
And then he told me his idea. And that was incredible. Farmers, and farmers are resilient, but they're also incredibly stubborn. And I can say that being a farmer's daughter. And that resilience is part of what has farmers endure. But it also makes them very skeptical of people who aren't inside of that system to understand the hardships of that system and the pressures of that system and how scary it would be in a life and death system to make a huge transition like that where you're not guaranteed anything.
Yeah.
But I think that farmers are realizing that if they want to be able to continue to farm, and they're learning from their neighbors one by one who are oh wait, they made a profit and they have multiple things that they're selling, but I only have this one thing and I'm totally dependent on it. Oh wait, they have a cover crop and during the rain, their soil didn't erode into the river. And so it's almost like seeing is believing for a lot of these farmers, and seeing people who are actually willing to go and take that risk being successful. And in the United States, over 90% of farmers who transition to regenerative agriculture make a profit within year one. That's the proof in the pudding for them. And that's what I've seen around the world, is farmers seeing it and then believing it. Yeah,
and because it becomes almost like not the cost of doing it, but the cost of not doing it is, I think, really powerful. And as you say, you look around at the neighbors, see what they're doing.
But to go to a farmer and say, the way you're spraying chemicals is harming us, that actually, it can't land.
No.
Because of cognitive dissonance. It's because farmers, in their hearts, are stewards of the earth.
Yeah.
And for them, that is like a sacred job that they're willing to be resilient and they're willing to endure the hardships because of. And so there is actually this commonality that often is overlooked, which is that farmers are making those choices because they believe that that's the right thing to do and that that's how they can feed the world. And that's been a great tagline for the Green Revolution and a very successful campaign, but it's a myth. And I think farmers are starting to realize that if you can't eat the food that you're growing in your backyard and you're shipping it all the way to the other side of the world, that's not really a system that makes any sense. And farmers are practical.
Right. And so few farmers actually grow food in America. They're growing corn, which you can't eat that corn. It's, for an animal feed yard miles away in, pretty intense feedlot conditions.
Yeah. But I think that fear, this is my opinion, and I don't have any evidence for this, but you asked me, so I'm going to tell you what I think. And what I think is that because farmers in their hearts really want to do good, they want to do good by their families, they want to do good by their communities, they want to grow healthy food, it's too hard for them to accept that they've been duped.
Yeah.
And that maybe what they've been doing has been harming people because it's such the antithesis of what they're committed to in their heart.
Yeah.
And I think that that's part of what leads farmers to suicide. It's a combination of debt, it's a combination of exhaustion, it's a combination of being exposed chronically to neurotoxins, and then ultimately this fear that maybe this wasn't the right way. And after defending that way for so long, that's a really hard pill to swallow.
Yeah, totally. There's a part of your movie that you probably didn't even notice, but you will notice it now, which is this time last year, I'm pleased to call him my good friend now, Gabe Brown.
Yes.
We have a community which we're building, which we call our Soilmates, which are people who have been very kind enough to come onto the podcast and share their passion and their knowledge and their energy and help our listeners feel slightly better off than they were before they listened. And so we presented Gabe with a little badge, which he put on right before he did his keynote speech, which features in your movie. And so when he's up on at Groundswell this time last year doing the speech, he's wearing this little teeny tiny badge, which made us feel so proud. And so now you have earned, if I can just get this.
I told him I wouldn't do the podcast if I didn't get a badge, so.
Yeah, this is
I'm clearly in this for the right reasons.
This is low-key bribery happening right here. So you are now officially, there's the little badge. You are now officially a Soilmate.
I'm so grateful.
Thank you for all the work you do, sincerely. I'm not going to cry or get emotional, but it means a lot.
You're welcome.
I am getting emotional.
I get emotional about it too.
Yeah, it means a lot. the thing that I love about your work is that, I can bring it to people who, like, I bore my friends to death about soil and stuff, but to show them a movie like yours is great because it can kind of bring them into our world and help them just really understand the importance of this, the importance that they can make a difference and that there is hope, and try to help them understand, you know, the conversations I have with them, which are probably way too technical because I've been doing this for too long. But so thank you for that, and sorry for crying.
No, I love it. Thank you. I think that the farmers deserve a cape, and so do you.
Okay. Yeah, you can have a hug. Thank you, Rebecca. Sincerely.
In 6 inches of soil, our world comes alive. A podcast of passion where all souls thrive. Soilmates unite in a bold common chase, building our future through Earth's living grace.